The point of your book, and I think, over the past several years, I feel like I've come to appreciate this more. And on one level, it's sort of obvious, but on another level, it's something that we seem to forget, is that this isn't really about even setting up these systems. I mean, this is the perpetuation of a system, and we're just seeing different tactics, right? I mean, because this
Yes.
goes back. I mean, and let's start with Reconstruction. I mean, obviously, and I think it's self-evident when when people are slaves, that they're being subjugated. But we see that even after emancipation,
Absolutely.
the basically the pushback, and this is what you describe throughout the book, is that there is progress and then there is blowback and pushback on it.
Yeah, I like blowback. That was good. I like
Well,
blowback.
let's start
Yeah.
with Reconstruction, because by your estimates, 80% of the country's GDP was a function of slavery in some fashion or another, and that was obviously, I guess, traumatic for the country to lose that.
Wow.
But let's take it from Reconstruction.
Yeah, so here we have this moment where the formerly enslaved are no longer property. By law, they are not property. That was absolutely jarring for so many in the Deep South, as well as for some in the North, but in the South. And what you saw were a series of laws that immediately came into place because President Andrew Johnson provided almost blanket amnesty for all of the Confederate leaders. So the folks who, in fact, attacked the United States in order to maintain slavery were now back in power after the Civil War. They passed what are known as the Black Codes. The Black Codes applied only to black people. The Black Code said that African Americans had to sign a labor contract, a yearly labor contract, and that they couldn't leave to go to another job. They had to stay with that employer, no matter how brutal, no matter how horrific the working conditions, no matter what kinds of wages were being paid. It said that African Americans, if you did not sign a labor contract, you could be arrested and charged with vagrancy. And then a plantation owner or a mill owner could then pay your fine, and you would have to work off your fine by basically indebting your labor to this plantation owner. It denied African Americans the right to own weapons so that they could not hunt or fish. That way, they couldn't stave off starvation, and so they would have to go and work in one of these areas for one of these brutal employers. It was a way to reinscribe slavery.
How did, I mean, I imagine people are asking themselves, like, well, I don't understand. How was this legal? How could you pass this laws? Where was the recourse?
And they could pass these laws because Andrew Johnson was a Democrat from Tennessee who believed that this war was only about preserving the Union. It wasn't about slavery. And so the moment that the Union had been preserved, he did not care about 4 million freed people. And as I said, he provided amnesty. Now, Congress is on recess at the time. When Congress comes back, Congress said, "What did you do?" And Johnson said, "I saved this nation." And Congress is like, that doesn't look like saving, because there's mass killing happening. The legal system provides no shelter for African Americans. They can't testify in court, again in the Black Codes. They can't testify against whites. And so you have this massive battle between Congress and the White House on who is going to control Reconstruction. Under Andrew Johnson, not only did you have the sanctioning of the Black Codes, but you also had the stripping of 40 acres and a mule, which was the means to provide some level of economic sustenance sustenance for 4 million freed people. And understand that this isn't land given to the slaves. This is land that is going to be leased to them. It's not like the Homestead Act that Johnson fought so hard for, which was to give 160 acres to poor whites. But this is where blacks would have to lease 40 acres. He rescinded that and had federal troops remove black people from the land. And this is land that had been abandoned by the plantation owners.
And so, I mean, once we have this sort of round of blowback, right? I mean, you have emancipated slaves, and then almost immediately you start to curtail all of those new freedoms, and you do it directly, and you do it through bank shots, right? I mean, the idea that you can't hunt means that your options, I mean, particularly at that time, are extremely limited in terms of the way that you're going to feed yourself and your family.
Exactly.
So where is the next sort of push in terms of progress, and then that is followed by the backlash again?
Yeah, so the next piece that I look at is the Great Migration. Because here you have black people basically saying, I am getting ready to take control of my own destiny. I'm leaving the South, and I'm going to go work up north where the wages are a lot better than what I'm dealing with here, where there appears to be a functioning legal system so that I don't have to deal with all of the lynching that is happening.
And we should tell people we're talking now basically from the early 1900s. I mean, I guess theoretically through the mid 20th century, and maybe even when does the Great Migration technically end?
Yes, so you have the first wave of the Great Migration, which is about 1915 to 1940, and then you have the second wave of the Great Migration, which I don't really cover in the book, which goes during the Second World War and takes us up until about the mid-1960s.
Okay.
And again, you have black people pouring out of the South because the jobs are really up north, because better pay is up north. And part of what we understand is that in the United States, you have the right to take your labor elsewhere. You have the right to take your labor to a better employer. What happened during the Great Migration, and this is when the U.S. is in the First World War and fighting to make the world safe for democracy, is that you had governments in the South, like in Jacksonville, Florida, like in Georgia, passing laws banning African Americans from leaving the area to go get a better job, and saying that they will be, if they're found guilty, they will be incarcerated, where they will have to work off their labor. So basically a way to enslave again. And so think about that. You cannot leave Jacksonville, Florida for a better job. And they banned, we talk about First Amendment rights. They banned the Chicago Defender. Because the Chicago Defender was a massive conduit of information about jobs and housing up north. And so you have municipality after municipality banning a newspaper in order to shut down the flow of information. Now, if that sounds like behind the Iron Curtain, it is. But this is what's happening in America while the U.S. is fighting to make the world safe for democracy.
Hello, you. I'm Sam Seder. Looking for smart progressive talk that is occasionally amusing? Well, subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to our podcast. Like us on Facebook. And just generally enjoy us.